Hey guys, it's Sam, and this is my spoiler-free review of Trail of Lightning by Rebecca Roanhorse. And Trail of Lightning was this month's Patreon book pick. Every month my Patreon supporters get to vote in a poll for a book that I will read and review that month, and this one for August. So if you are interested in becoming a patron and voting in polls like that for my content on this channel and also my other channel, I will leave my Patreon on the screen. This is the first book in an adult urban fantasy series, and it takes place in a post-apocalyptic world that is inspired by Native American folklore and mythology and is being overrun by these Native American myths and monsters. We follow our main character of Maggie, who is a monster hunter. She is Native American herself, and she has some clan abilities. Some people in this world are gifted with clan abilities in which they get some kind of ability. Hers happen to be related to swiftness and killing, obviously, as a monster hunter. And at the beginning of the book, in typical urban fantasy fashion, she gets recruited to kind of take on this monster case, and it ends up being more than she initially thought at first glance, and everything kind of takes off from there. So first off, we talk about the world building. Yes, this is an urban fantasy, but it's not so urban in the fact that it takes place in a city. It takes place out in like desolate post-apocalyptic countryside. In this world, like I said, it's post-apocalyptic. There's been a lot of natural disasters and horrible things that have happened, and the world has completely changed. But in this part of what used to be the United States, the Native Americans have kind of walled themselves off with this magical wall, and they're all contained inside of it and safe inside of it because everything outside is just complete and utter chaos. But inside, a lot of the myths and monsters from Native American folklore have awakened and are also wreaking all kinds of havoc. But it's more of like a desolate kind of wasteland even in there. I picture almost like a Borderlands video game type world where there's people and there's settlements, but things are real rough, man. But I really have enjoyed this world so far. It's very rough and tumble, as a lot of urban fantasy worlds are, but I've definitely been enjoying it because it's like this post-apocalyptic world and these Native American myths and folklore and stuff that you just don't see in urban fantasy. Obviously, it's like your typical fantasy creatures. These are not. These are their own unique, based on a completely different set of mythology creatures, and it's so cool. Next, I'm gonna talk about our characters. So I will say with the characters and with some of the plot things in general, there are some tropes that from urban fantasy that this still follows. I grew up reading urban fantasy, and it's something that is very nostalgic for me, but there's still some things that I think not everyone will like, but that have been improved upon within the genre because some of these things used to be very bad. So, for example, I really enjoy our main character, but she is a very typical urban fantasy main character for a female character. She's definitely a strong female character, but I think it's very much kind of tongue-in-cheek. I think that the author's very much aware of what she's doing, and she's going to make her develop and grow more throughout the series. But she's that character that's like rough and tumble, Jessica Jones-y, you know, she's not drinking, but she could be drinking whiskey straight from the bottle. You know, she doesn't want to dress up or anything like that. Like, she has her stock uniform. There's that scene that's in every urban fantasy series at some point where like the, you know, monster hunter woman gets dressed up by someone else and she's like, oh, I don't want to look like this. I'm uncomfortable in my like hot outfit, you know, stuff like that. So I have fond feelings for stuff like that. I will say that this main character can sometimes have some like internalized misogyny. At one point she is joking around with one of the other characters and she refers to sitting in the sidecar, sitting behind or something on a motorcycle as like the bitch seat, which I'm just like, okay. But I think again, it's more something that the character is going to evolve, but there is some like internalized misogyny definitely going out with this character, which is pretty common within urban fantasy as a trope, honestly. There's also the urban fantasy thing where there's a bunch of different like side character and location areas that pop up a lot. I just feel like there's certain things in urban fantasy that like there's these settings within the main setting that pop up a lot, and there's these characters, these groups within these settings that pop up a lot. They're going to be a theme throughout the series, and this book is really setting those up, which is always enjoyable. There's also just enough explanation of like some of these creatures and some of these gods from Native American folklore if you're not familiar with them, so that you get introduced to them kind of slowly, and that's nice that there's like a little almost primer to that, and just characters that you're going to see pop back up again. I also really like some of the like romantic tension stuff that's in here. So sometimes urban fantasies can be deeply problematic with their romantic relationships. Although there are elements of that in here, there's more good stuff, and there's actually a pair in here that I ship highly, and I haven't been shipping that much lately. So yeah, this is a fairly short book, so there's not a ton of time that you get to spend with these characters, but what we got with them I'm really excited about. I'm excited for the rest of the series and us being like introduced to them. Lastly, we talk about the plot. Again, there's some like trope things in here, but tropes that are being sort of spun on their head or have a new direction because of the mythology that it's based on. And there is this again happens a lot in urban fantasy. I'm just basically saying like, this happens a lot in urban fantasy, but if you're used to the genre, it does. And for me, again, it feels nostalgic and I like it, so some people might not enjoy it, but I generally do, or at least kind of forgive it within urban fantasy for some reason. But there are parts of this that don't quite meander because this is a short book and urban fantasy tends to clip along at a pretty fast pace, but I do find sometimes with urban fantasy books that the end, a lot of stuff will happen like really, really fast and get wrapped up fairly quickly, and I feel like that happened here, but I'm sort of okay with it. But that is like the pacing is a little slightly off, but again, it's not like it's slow in the rest of the book. It's just like a ton happens at the end of the book. And I do feel like there's some explanations that get a little bit murky, a little bit vague. There's certain character explanations that are like, I don't quite follow, but the characters are reacting, but I don't really know what's quite happening and stuff like that. But overall, really enjoyable first book in a series. I am very much looking forward to the rest of the series. I plan on following the series for a while. I need a new urban fantasy series to follow. I was hoping this would be it, and I think that it is. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. I will be doing a spoilery gush on this book, so I will link that on the screen for you to check out if you've read Trail of Lightning. So comment below, let me know your thoughts on Trail of Lightning. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see all of you guys soon.